Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Masculine Mastery. I'm your host, Dr. Asif, and all the way from the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, we've got TJ Burdett. I hope I pronounced that right.
You nailed it.
Good. TJ Burdett, who is a mindset and life coach at Live Holy Human. He prides himself as a presence coach, and I've been following him for a while now on LinkedIn and then more recently on Instagram, where he does coaching and lots of lifestyle type stuff, affirmations, positive talk, similar to me. So, TJ, pleasure to meet you.
Asif, it is a pleasure to see you because I've seen your content for a while now, and super grateful to be on and be chatting with you.
And thank you. Pleasure's all mine, and thank you for rescheduling this after last week. How have you been?
I've been great. It was perfect because like 5 minutes before I was supposed to start, there was a jackhammer that just started right outside my window. So the 1 week delay worked out perfectly for me as well.
Great, that's good. And I've been following your content on LinkedIn for a while. I think LinkedIn seems to be your biggest platform.
Yes, it is my biggest platform. And it's funny too, because with this transition that I made from the corporate world into life coaching, presence coaching, that was where I had the most fear of like posting these ideas and connecting with people, because that was my old corporate life.
Yes.
And then a quick transition into this. So yeah, biggest following and most impact so far.
No, absolutely. I think LinkedIn, for me anyway, it gives me that freedom. There's no word limit. There's no, with Instagram, there's filters. LinkedIn, there's no filters. You can write a whole paragraph. You can write a line. You can write an essay. And it's very professional. And a lot of doctors I know, including myself, actually, we've made the transition from not corporate world, but medical world into coaching. And that transition started with LinkedIn, and then Instagram, TikTok, YouTube followed. But LinkedIn seems to be the most natural kind of transition, because it's, you're corporate, you've got your 9-to-5 job, whatever that may be, blue collar job, white collar job, and then you kind of go into coaching. How was the transition for you? So you said corporate, but I read somewhere you were in the corps, right? You were in the Marine?
Yes, I was in the Marines for 8 years. Then I transitioned to the corporate world. I was in medical device sales. And then I went through my a year of like self-growth, kind of a personal journey. And I realized that so much of this was just overcoming my own fear to see myself differently and work through my own challenges. And then I just started sharing it. So the transition into coaching, it was met with some resistance by some friends and loved ones, but by and large, overwhelmingly positive. And at LinkedIn, the way that people connect on LinkedIn and embrace authentic content, it's powerful. It's powerful.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And LinkedIn allows for reactions, comments, reshares, repost. And on the back of that, you get much more engagement organically, because I get a lot of DMs on whenever I share something anyway. Whereas Instagram, it can get lost in the ether. And with Instagram as well, TJ, because you get recommended random people's posts who you don't even follow. Whereas in LinkedIn, it's more organic. It's someone in your network either shares, or someone in your network either likes something. Hence, you've got similar interests. It's a very close-knit community, I find. Whereas Instagram, a post could reach a lot of people who may not necessarily have the same interests as you. So I do find LinkedIn more of a community. So you mentioned there the Marines, 8 years, is that right?
That's right.
Cool. And then into coaching. So I coach a lot of ex-military guys in the UK, RAF, Royal Navy, and they come with PTSD, anxiety, burnout even, very common in the military as well as in medicine, doctors post-COVID. So a lot of my coaching predominantly is doctors, but I do get maybe 10-20% of people who are ex-military personnel. So your own experience of the military, 8 years, that led you into coaching, was it burnout, anxiety, PTSD? Was it trauma? Was it bullying? What kind of things made you reclaim your life back?
Great question. I knew that I was going to join the military from the time that I was a child. So it was my life's purpose.
Yeah.
And by and large, the experience in the Marine Corps was great. And I loved it and I enjoyed it and I learned a lot from it. That challenge was I was looking at that as something that would provide internal fulfillment.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the biggest challenge. And over time, as I accomplished more, both in the military and in corporate, it was as though my anxiety was getting worse, more prevalent, because nothing that I was doing externally was fulfilling that internal
Hmm.
cup.
Yeah.
So for me, it wasn't necessarily anything specific from my time in the military that was like the source of the trauma that I had
Yeah.
to address. It was literally just I was looking externally for something that it can only be found internally.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I talk a lot about this in my coaching, an existential void. You know, a lot of people are very high performing. You know, I get doctors, surgeons, all sorts of people, even some TV actors. They're very ostensibly successful on the surface, but inside, and we see it in the news. You know, how many um, celebrities, singers, actors, athletes overdose on drugs, and some of them end up dying because it looks good on the surface, performing very well, good job, etc. But internally, you can't really see what's going on, and we call that an existential crisis. And it's happened to many of my colleagues. There's some guys who are very, very successful in their fields, top surgeons. Some of them were royal surgeons, actually. They were the Queen's surgeons. But inside, drinking problems, depression, insomnia, and just self-soothing with medication. But in the day, they put on the mask, go back to work. And it's that on the surface looks very, very shiny, but inside the apple is rotting away. So I see a lot of that. And it's, it's really, really brave for you to actually make that transition, because a lot of people continue for 40 years, they get to 65, and they would rather be in certainty and misery than uncertainty and happiness. And that's the one thing I found.
I feel that. I feel that, my friend. And I love the existential void, the way you phrased that. Yes.
It's not true, because, on the surface, everything looks good and numbers-wise, but life is not a game of numbers, is it? And you can't really quantify fulfillment. So when you made that leap, TJ, I'm assuming there must have been a lot of eyebrows. So you're going from employed, you're employed by the US military for 8 years, almost a decade, and it's a childhood dream. It's more than a job. It's a calling. Just like medicine, the military is not a job. It's a lifelong endeavor. You're out with your family, you're out away from your family for months and months and months. There's risk of life and death. Because I've never been in the military. I was a doctor during COVID. I still got the scars on my face, actually, from the mask, the COVID mask. So I felt like I was in the military. I felt like I was in the military day to day. It was like a, military zone, a battle zone, death of colleagues, death of patients. And that's the first time I felt like I was in the military. First time I had to write a will, actually. I wrote a will. I had 2 young boys at the time, writing a will. And I'm assuming that's a similar feeling in the military, because if you're posted in Afghanistan or Iraq or in Libya or in Syria, there's a high chance of death, because if you're actually posted with them. So that's a calling, it's not a job. And then you went into medical devices. Again, you're employed. I'm assuming it's commission-based, but you still got a salary. So you go from a regular job where you get a salary, you go into then the precarious world of kind of self-promotion and coaching. And what was the initial reaction from, let's say, your parents or those who have seen you from a young age, knowing TJ wanted to be in the military and now TJ wants to be a coach?
Gosh, another great question. And also, when you brought up how you had to write out a will for the first time in your life, that brought me back to, I remember sitting in auditoriums with all these Marines before we deployed, like all writing out our will. Yes. And there's something really profoundly powerful about having to look at the possibility of your own death in the calling that you're doing. But anyway, so there was definitely some eyebrows raised, like out of nowhere, right? Like I had this perfect surface level, shiny life going on. And then it's like, boom, by the way, I struggled with mental health, and here's more of my story. Here's more of my story. And a lot of people at first, friends and family, were like, what are you doing? Are you okay? Kind of like hoping that I would stop doing that. It felt like not very supportive, and then growing more distant.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's always signs though to keep going, like encouragement or real conversations with people that it would help. So I just kept following the heart, kept posting. And I'll say that it's not crazy if it's consistent, because at first people thought like, oh, he's losing it. And now the consistency, the same people are like coming back around. I'm like, all right, I'm picking up what you're putting down, or at least I see that it's helping other people.
Yes, exactly. And that's invaluable, because often in jobs, even in medicine, I don't really see the effect of my work, because, you see a patient, you change their medications, take them off of medication, etc., you often don't see the effect of your work because medicine is a long-term game. But in coaching, I see immediate results. Within 6 sessions, I can see mindset clicking. I can see their cognitive reframing. I can see them change their habits. I can see them improve their lifestyle, their sleep, their eating, their breathing, their posture, the way they think about things. I can see, because you have 1 hour with a client or even half an hour. Medicine, you don't, especially in ER, you don't get that time with patients. It's quick in and out. Medicines, I often describe it as firefighting. And now I've got time. I've got 1 hour with each client. I can really get deep into their worries, concerns, ideas, expectations, and feelings. Whereas in medicine, you just got to dampen the blood flow. You've got to stop the blood flow, get them on the way, and patch them up. But so I feel like I'm doing more of a medical job now in coaching, actually helping people, healing people. And you mentioned there, now people are not backtracking, but realizing that you are not just doing it as a side hobby. This is your full-time profession now, and you are professional about it. I've seen your website, I've seen your LinkedIn profile, I've seen your posts you do, very well curated. You are professional, and this is no longer a side hobby. This is TJ, this is you, this is your career and calling now. So why Live Holy Human? Like it's a great name. I love it, by the way. I love names which are self-explanatory, but from your own mouth, how did that name come about?
When I was healing, I realized that so much of what I was going through was overcoming my own fear and accepting the parts of myself that I was trying to hide from, or that I was ashamed of, that I felt guilt or regret over. And I realized that I can't accept all the light within myself and all the good parts unless I'm also willing to accept the challenges and the regrets. And it's in the accepting of the difficulties that I was able to become more whole. And I realized, like holy human, live holy human, accept all of ourselves to be able to then let our light shine brighter.
I love that. And it's embracing your vulnerabilities as well. And also, many of my clients, maybe yours as well, they have childhood trauma, childhood neglect, adverse childhood experiences. Some are from foster homes. And I always say to them, look, that's not your fault, but it is your responsibility now as an adult. Your bad parents, your neglectful parents, it's not your fault. You're a child. You should have had love and emotional connection, but you didn't. Your father was an alcoholic or your mother was a drug abuser. That's not your fault. But now, as a 25 or 30 or 40-year-old man, it is your responsibility. And I always say, accept and act. Accept your past and act on it. Accept doesn't mean approve. So people get that wrong. Oh, Dr. Asif, how can you say accept what my parents did? I'm saying no. Accept is different to approve. You don't approve of what they did, but you still accept. And without acceptance, you cannot move on. So you said there, TJ, live holy and embrace your darkness. And I think that it reminds me of Coach Carter. I don't know if you see the movie.
I know it. I haven't seen it.
Oh, okay, grateful. Samuel L. Jackson, and it's a great quote from poem by Marianne Williamson. I think that's her name. She writes about darkness. I can't recall the exact phrase, but it's like our light and our darkness scares us.
Yes,
and that's so true. Light and darkness.
Yes.
And people just think, oh, it's light. But it's actually our unfair advantage. Like if you read Oprah Winfrey's book, she had a very bad childhood. I think she was abused, but she used that made her very vigilant of other people. And because she was very vigilant of other people, she became a great interviewer. She became a great host. So it's that darkness, that darkness which can really, really propel you to the next level. And if you look at some of the world's most successful people in any endeavor, they've got this darkness in them. They've got, and don't suppress that, by the way. Don't suppress it. Use it for good. Transmute that darkness into good.
Yes. Oh, man. Can I share an example of that?
Yes.
How that played out in my life? So I joined the Marines looking for this ultimate fulfillment and accomplishment. And it was a great experience, but I didn't get that. I didn't get that ultimate fulfillment. However, I grew up right near New York City. I didn't grow up as someone who went camping and like spent time in the outdoors. In the Marines, I realized I loved being outside and camping and being in the mountains for weeks at a time. And so that was a love developed in the Marines that in my healing journey the past year, when I really knew it was important to have silence and solitude, I went out to nature by myself twice for a couple days each. And it's just funny how the most difficult challenges in our lives can also show us the way to find the most light as well.
Yeah. No, exactly, 100%. And nature is so therapeutic. I always say, you guys are blessed in America. There's so much nature there. You've got so much parks and canyons and, wilderness. I've always wanted to go to Oregon and Washington and Seattle. I wanted to do that route in the Pacific Northwest. Is that what it's called?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, I've been wanting to do that for many, many years. And Route 66 as well, just driving across America. You're very lucky to have so much wilderness, and this is so important. I was watching the movie 72. It's about the guy who gets trapped in a mountain and he has to cut off his arm.
Oh yeah.
72 or 74. But again, there's a lot of people who've had this corporate experience or in the Marines who've just been used to noise and commotion. And they want the peace. They want the peace. And again, we live in a world that's very distracting, dopamine dysregulation, smartphones. We're connected, which is a good thing, but at the same time, we're very disconnected from ourselves, I believe. We're connected to the people online, but from our own selves, we're very disconnected. And, we're almost disintegrated. There's a mind-body disconnection there. And, a big part of your coaching, TJ, is presence coaching. You coach people how to be more present. What's your definition of being present? I like that. Nice pause. You're very present there. What's your definition? I know people say mindfulness. Being present is being mindful. Being present is being all in the moment. But what's your own definition? With your clients, what do you tell them about being present? Are they distracted? Are they not focused? How do you make them more present?
Example, sitting with them in presence, and it's where we feel our emotions. It's almost as though that's where the mind-body connection happens. Whereas in the past, I was so caught up in the noise of the world and my own mind that I didn't know how to just sit with myself and process the emotions. And it's in that ability to do it myself that I'm able to sit with people and just show them. Like silence and conversation is okay. It's actually very powerful. So we can both process what's being communicated and what's being felt. So I'm not sure if that was a definition or an example, but the willingness to sit in the discomfort together. Because when we sit in the discomfort, we realize it's not uncomfortable, actually. It's powerful.
No, exactly. And we live in such a overstimulated world where silence is seen as awkward. And actually, being your own best friend sometimes, solitude, and you mentioned nature there earlier, walks, 2-day walks in nature. Did you take your phone with you?
I did, but I didn't use it frequently, especially on the second time I went. I didn't even have service. So it was like 5 days, off the grid. Yeah.
And it feels very liberating. Because, how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
How long?
No, how old are you?
Oh, 34.
Same age, I'm 35. So we grew up kind of without phones, right? In the 90s, no phones in the 90s. So this is quite new for us. Smartphones are quite new for us. And, in the military as well, you would have had a lot of noise. I'm used to a lot of noise, beepers and buzzers going off in the hospital. I'm used to that. So whenever sorry?
As an example of the noise, we just got an Amber Alert. It was like a nationwide alert testing whatever the warning system is. And I deliberately turned off government notifications. And that's what came through 5 minutes ago, and it just started blasting. It's like, oh, okay, I guess this is coming through. The noise is coming through either way.
Exactly. I think we live in a world where it's almost impossible to get rid of noise completely. Even the walls of radiation. I was watching a documentary yesterday in ex-Soviet states. There's a country called Kyrgyzstan. It's a small ex-Soviet state. And there's radiation there from ex-Soviet bunkers in the walls. And we have radiation as well. Walls emit radiation. Microwaves, infrared rays. Some of it's nuclear radiation as well. Some of it's radioactive material. We live in a in a world which is constantly stimulating our brains. We can't really sense it. It's doing it at a micro level, but our brains are constantly fired. So our world is very radioactive compared to what it was in the 90s, growing up. With presence, TJ, I think you gave a really good example there, taking a pause before answering. And I think that's very, very powerful. And I think people who speak less have more weight to their words. And I often say to a lot of people, you actually talk and you don't speak. Instead, learn to speak, not talk. Because anyone can talk. Even a parrot can talk.
Yes.
But you need to learn how to speak. And I said, you need to learn how to not hear, but listen. They're the two the opposite things. People think talking and speaking are the same. People think listening and hearing are the same. No. Hearing is a physiological function. Listening is a mental function. Hearing is essentially your eardrums are vibrating. Anyone can hear, even birds can hear, dogs can hear, and they can in fact hear better than we can. But only humans can listen. So listening is, and I tell that to my clients. They come for coaching with marital disputes, and I'm like, your wife is not saying that you don't hear her. She's saying that you don't listen to her. There's a difference. Yeah, you heard the noise, but you didn't listen to the sound. Therein lies the difference. So we mentioned phone there, TJ. What other things do you find are causing a lack of focus in people today?
It's that people are hearing and they think they're listening.
Yeah.
So people hear, and if they're not listening, that hearing comes into the mind, and it's reflected against these patterns that are deeply ingrained in our subconscious, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
And we think we're listening.
Yes.
But we're not hearing. Yeah. So,
yeah.
And there's so many different ways that's happening in today's world.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think we're overstimulated. Overstimulation is one of the biggest pandemics of our time. I see you on Instagram, not on LinkedIn, but I see you on Instagram. You're out in the wild, topless, running, whatever. So how important is fitness? Because for me, fitness is key. Like, I tell all my clients, guys, get in shape. You're carrying excess weight, get in shape, build muscle, get lean. High muscle equals higher testosterone, equals higher metabolism, equals better executive functioning. You've been in the Marines 8 years. Obviously you're a fit guy. So how important is fitness? And do you actually talk about fitness to your clients when you speak to them?
I do. Yeah. Fitness is super important. And I think I've always been in shape. And I was in the Marines and I did a very physically demanding job. I was always in shape. What's really important about how I'm approaching fitness now, and this was a key shift for me, it was the why behind the fitness, right? I used to do physically demanding events to train for and get ready for future physical tests. So I would pass them and then look good and have this stature in the Marines. And now I approach fitness. It's so important for all the reasons that you said. Mind-body connection, super healthy, invigorating. But I do it for that reason. I run to connect with myself and to push myself beyond my comfort zone for me. So I know where my comfort zone is. It's not for anyone else. It's not to look good. It's not for a summer body. It is just for that mind-body connection. And that's what I work with my clients on.
No, that's great, because Simon Sinek, from Canada, he talks about this as well. Have a strong why. If your why is flimsy, if your why is built on sticks, your why is, I want a six-pack for Instagram, I want a summer bod, I want to go on a date and I want to get in shape. It's a very flimsy why. What happens when summer's gone? What happens when the date is gone? You need to have a strong why, and I think there's no stronger why than mind-body connection. As soon as my father always told me, a healthy mind has a healthy body has a healthy mind. And when I was doing my GCSEs and essentially my high school and college and medical school, he said, the harder the exam, the stronger and fitter you get. It sounds very counterintuitive. You're like, I don't have time because I've got a strong raised tough exam. He said, no. The harder the exam, the fitter you get. Because again, mind-body connection. And only now we're starting to realize the importance of mind-body connection with regard to the gut microbiome. So what you eat, what you hold in your gut, or even having boiling water with lemon, vitamin C clearing out the skin, good for the gut, high acidity, very good for the blood as well, clearing out any toxins. So now we're understanding mind-body connection in relation to the gut microbiome, and how so many neurochemicals like serotonin are released from the gut microbes. And look out, even today I was having kefir and fermented drinks. So important. When I was at medical school, we only talked about having pills, throwing pills at people. But I always say, if everyone had a strong why with their physique, so much mental health ailments and illness would actually disappear overnight if people actually had a strong why. Because what causes a lot of depression, you mentioned earlier right at the beginning of the talk, you mentioned you were unfulfilled, you had a void there, and that why fills the void, the big why. So coaching, I should have asked at the beginning, TJ, you could have gone into journalism, you could have gone into teaching, you could have stayed in the military 25 years, got a pension, nice pension. They could have paid for your university and all that stuff. Why coaching? Is it because you kind of needed someone and you became that person that you needed, or was there another reason?
That's a great way to put it. I figured out how to solve my own challenges. And it's not like I have all my challenges solved, but once I figured out that truly it's internal, not external, that having a why, that deep why that's rooted in my internal being, and not a why that's flimsy, that then branches out to like some sort of external validation. So having that depth of why and figuring out how to navigate my own fears to grow closer and closer to that, I just felt like I had something to share that could benefit people. And there's a veteran suicide issue that, widely reported that 22 to 40 veterans per day are killing themselves. I know more veterans that have killed themselves since we've returned back from Afghanistan than all the Marines that we lost on that deployment and training beforehand, which was 10. We lost 7 Marines in training, 3 Marines in combat, and more have since killed themselves. So I believe that a huge part of that is an inability to work through our own fears to come into the present moment, because there's something from the past that's keeping people trapped. And that's okay. So I just want to share that, hey, like, it is possible to work through that stuff, even the dark stuff.
No, I love that, man. I love that. And yes, I'm fully aware of the veteran suicide rate. And I think physicians have 2.5 times the suicide rate of the population. I'm not sure what veterans have, but I know it's up there. It's very, very high. And not even suicide, it's the PTSD as well, the anxiety, the inability to come back into a society as well. And then there's a higher rate of arson and, kind of antisocial behavior of some veterans that come back. And there's actually a higher rate of poverty as well. Just so many things that happen, because when you're deployed for 3 or 4 years, trying to come back into society where you've been in a close group, depression is certainly a big one. It's actually a very good song. You should listen to it. It's called "How to Be a Man" by Dax. He's a Canadian guy as well. He's from Canada, and he says it's one of the lines I'm trying to remember. It's a great line, by the way. One of my favorite lines of all time. He says they go to war, then get thrown on the shelf, then go to war with their mental health.
Damn.
I thought, wow, he's hit it on the head. That is so powerful. They go to war, get thrown on the shelf, because a lot of veterans, they come back and they can't get jobs in America. I know there's schemes now to get people into employment, even in the UK. So when you apply for a job, this says that you're ex-veteran, ex-RAF, etc. So they get thrown on the shelf, and then they go to war with the mental health. I thought, wow. Because it's true. Drinking rates, drug use, and suicide, much higher in veterans. Much higher in veterans. And you're leading the way, by the way, TJ. I must say that, it's very exemplary. I know ex-veterans, I know like Patrick Bet-David. There's, who's the big guy on Instagram at the moment? The guy with a big neck, big head.
Jocko Willing?
Yes, it's great those drinks. But it's great to see, veterans actually coming back and talking about life, how it was out there. Because a lot of guys just come back with PTSD. I've seen it. My clients as well. They go as men, and they come back as shells of men, shells. And the support system we have is very, very limited. I used to work in a rehabilitation center. I was a doctor for amputee Marines. So no Marines, but in the military in the UK. So Royal Navy as well, the RAF. Guys who were amputees. So I was their doctor. You know, I would look after them, do the rehabilitation on them. It wasn't the amputation that would kill them. It was the mental health that would kill them.
Wow.
It wasn't amputation. It was mental health. These guys are physically very, very strong, but they've come back from a very, let's say, in an environment which is very high stimulation into an environment which is less stimulating. And they call it the rock top effect. So you've got the rock bottom effect, where you lose your job, you lose your wife or children, whatever. Something happens, so you hit rock bottom, and you go into depression. But there's also something called the rock top effect, where you're the top of the rock, top of the mountain, and then that mountain then disappears. You see in heavyweight boxers, in athletes, they're actually crying when they've won the gold medal, because their why has gone. Their why is gone. And it's very common, actually. So in the Olympics, it's been talked about quite a lot in the Olympics, where guys who actually win an Olympic gold medal, they actually, when the psychologist goes into the dressing room, they're crying. And they're crying from sadness, not from happiness. Because they're like, I've been doing this for 4 years. Now, where's my why? And this way goes to what you mentioned earlier, having a why which is inherent. And have you heard of external versus internal motivation?
I believe so. What do you mean by it?
Your external is, gold medals. Internal is, it's just, I'm doing it for myself. I'm doing it for that mind-body connection. And that will never go until you die. Internal motivation, it's not dependent on your parents. It's not dependent on validation. It's not dependent on praise. It's not dependent on gold medals or military service. So it's not dependent on any medals in the military, any promotions to general and colonel and lieutenant. It's all to do with internal validation, and that will never die. And I think that is very, very important. I was going to ask you, TJ, on Instagram, I see a lot of your, daily routines and coffee and drinking. And what is a typical day like for you? What time do you wake up? And what time do you sleep? And what do you do in between?
So when I was first coming into coaching, right, and I was going through this big life transition, I was very regimented with my morning routine and what I was doing. I was like, wake up, and then before looking at my phone, I would journal, and then I would do breath work, and then I would get in a cold shower. And it was like this, then this, then this, then this. Yeah. But I realized that, like, okay, if I don't do one of these things, then I feel bad about not doing it. Mm-hmm. So it's like almost setting these expectations for myself, and I was being hard on myself with it. So all that to say, I'm a lot more relaxed with my routines, but there's so many different tools that I have to establish that mind-body connection, whether it's just like 10 minutes of centering in the morning and meditation, journaling, cold plunging, going to the gym and working out. So I really just feel my way through the day quite often. And when I need to do something, it's like, boom, let's get in the cold plunge, or let's do some breath work, and trusting myself that as I need the tools, I have the tools available. I
love that. And that's called intuition. Instead of being regimented, it's intuition. Because I find, again, being regimented is a burden. I've got to do this, and I've got to do it this 10 minutes of meditation. If I do 9.5 minutes, I've not had enough. It's very, very, very reductionist. It puts you into boxes. I always find the best, most, let's say, the way with the greatest compliance and persistence, and what you mentioned earlier, consistency, the way which has the greatest adherence is having intuition. I always say to my clients, if you're going to work out and eat properly, be an intuitive eater and be an intuitive gym goer. Don't be so regimented, because regimented regimes, it's good to have some semi-structure. Like, I don't tend to drink caffeine after 6. I don't drink water after 8 p.m. I don't sleep after 11 p.m. I don't lie in after 8 p.m. 8 a.m. I've got rough ballpark figures, but I'm not minute by minute accountable. Otherwise, the whole life becomes a burden. It's all about bandwidth preservation. I've got rough figures, and if I can never say Monday is chest day, Wednesday is arms day, and Thursday is legs day. Because, you travel. I've got children as well. And, you travel, things happen. I work in the hospital. You can't be so regimented. And then what happens if you miss a day, you get guilty if you're so regimented. But if you've got a semi-flexible calendar, you just make it up. And I believe that's the best way to adhere to anything, is having accountability, yes, but not being super accountable in that way. And thirdly, having intuition. Like yesterday, I worked out, and then today I'm going to work out a bit more. Tomorrow I'll have a day off. Yesterday I ate this. Today I'm going to eat this. You don't have to write everything down when you eat, but it's having that ballpark figure within 80-90%.
That's amazing. That's it. Like, I sleep for 8 hours a night. Yeah. I trust my intuition. When I eat, I don't snack on garbage food. I snack on like nuts and fruit, and like, it's just kind of intuitive flow that I try to keep myself in.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the key word there, intuitive. And I always say, the more intuitive you can be with things, the greater adherence. It's like when you go into the toilet. It's intuition. Like, I need to go to the toilet now. I need to do it. It's like showering. It becomes into brushing your teeth. Intuition.
Yes.
So you bring these things into your subconscious mind. Otherwise, it's on the jackhammer again, is it?
No. That was the fridge.
Cool. And then in terms of cold plunging, I tried that for a few days. And in the UK, you guys are blessed with nice seasons, especially in the West. East, I know, gets very, very cold. The winters in New York are cold, but I know in the West you get really nice. Even winters are quite nice. So in the UK, I couldn't do cold showers. I just couldn't do it. It was way too cold in the winter. From October to February, UK gets very, very cold. We get ice and snow. So I couldn't do cold showers. So with cold plunges, how long do you do it for? And have you seen any improvement in your muscle mass, concentration? I know people say it can improve testosterone levels as well. What's been the biggest benefit for you with cold plunges?
Oh, it's that mind-body connection. And I've been cold plunging for, every time I get in, it's at least 13 minutes. The most I've done is 32 or 33 minutes. Yeah.
So is that an ice bath?
It's an ice bath. Yep.
Oh goodness.
Yeah.
I used to do 30-second cold showers. Like The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. Yeah. It talks about cold showers. But he's from he's from Hawaii, I think, or somewhere, a hot country. But yeah, so in the UK, it's just super cold. And I've tried cold showers, but no, cold plunging definitely is on my list to do at least once. And because Wim Hof talks about it a lot. Wim Hof,
yes,
the Iceman, and it talks about how it establishes a mind-body connection, because that's the only time you're truly connected. That's the only time, by the way, in medical speaking.
Really?
Yeah, the only time you can be truly connected is because your vagus nerve gets truly activated, and you can reduce your breathing rate because you're shivering. You're shivering, but then if you can control your shivering, you control your autonomic nervous system. And that's the only true way. That and like kind of profound meditation. Very hard to do meditation in the West, like constantly stimulated. But cold plunges, anything more than 5 to 7 minutes, that's when it's really established. So Wim Hof talks about it a lot. And what made him start his ice journey was his traumatic life. He had his wife died, etc. Had a very traumatic life in that sense. I think he was in his 30s or 40s when his wife committed suicide, and he went on this journey of rediscovery, rather like himself in a way. And he found cold plungers to be the most effective way to establish a mind-body connection, because you have nothing else to rely on but your mind and your body.
Yes. Yeah, he talks about how it was just intuitive for him to get into that cold lake right near his house. Yeah. And then he just started going in there every day. Yeah,
exactly. And even athletes are doing it now as well, but they're doing it more for recovery. But it probably is the greatest challenge I think anyone can do. Forget marathons, ultra marathons. I think an ice plunge, a cold plunge, really is, because essentially you are forced, and they say necessity is the mother of invention. And you are forced to be mindful at the time. Otherwise your mind runs off. So that's your ice plungers. And what about your diet? Like, what's it like? You said you eat nuts and fruits. What's kind of your main staple food? Do you have 1 meal a day or 3 meals a day?
Usually 2 big meals a day, then snacks. It's intuitive though. I'm not an expert on nutrition, but I stay to the outside of the grocery store. I snack on fruits and vegetables and nuts, and try to eat lean, healthy foods.
Good. So everything, meat, fish, steak. Yep. Good. And then, do you fast at all? Intermittent fasting?
I fasted once this year. I did a 3-day fast. And then I was doing some intermittent fasting on the back end of that. I've kind of gotten away from that. I see its benefit. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, no, I'm a big intermittent faster. I fast, like, even now I'm just drinking water, so I'm zero calories. I have 1 meal a day, sometimes 2 meals a day, but yeah, usually 1 or 2 meals a day. But I fast for 18 hours most days, sometimes 24. I've not done a 3-day. I can't get that far. I've done 2 days and 4 hours. So I've done 52 hour fast. So that's 52 hour fast. But you done 72 hours, right? 72 hours.
72. I did coffee and tea, but no food.
Yeah, just black coffee, black tea, and just 0 calories. How was that?
It was so interesting. It was so interesting because it brought up these deep emotions that were so similar to other healing modalities that I've done. Like I've experienced psilocybin mushrooms, psychedelics, and the visuals with psychedelics were a lot different than the fast, of course, but the emotions, the depth of emotions were similar.
No, I need to try it. I've done 48 hours, and then because I didn't want to do it longer because obviously you can get the diarrhea as well. You get refeeding afterwards as well. So but yeah, I think I need to do 3 days. I know people have done 7 days water fasting as well. And the thing is, we hold so much glycogen in our muscles and our liver. You can survive on that for 7 days. It's actually not going to kill you. But we're so used to eating every hour. We wake up, we have breakfast. The whole industry has kind of poisoned our minds to think we need to have 3 meals a day and lots of snacking, cereals and cornflakes and crisp and cookies. The marketing is so powerful. We've been kind of brainwashed into thinking we need to eat 3,000 calories a day. But you can go with very little food. People have gone for food without for days. David Blaine did it for how many days? 40 days?
Dang. Yeah. And it's so interesting because that's just working through these conditioned fears of like, oh, I need to eat. And then that the body has the craving, but it's overpowering that and saying like, and deciding like, no, I don't need to eat. I know I'm safe. I can go 24 hours without food. And it's the same thing getting into a cold plunge where it's like, oh gosh, this might kill me. It's going to be really cold. It's like, I know it's not going to kill me. I could get in this for 3 minutes and just focus on my breath and I'll be okay.
Yeah, exactly. Because they say if you can control your breath in cold, you can control it in any stressful situation because your body's telling you to breathe quicker and your diaphragm freezes. So it's very hard to breathe through the diaphragm when you're cold plunging. Your diaphragm at the bottom of your ribs and your lungs freezes. It's a muscle, isn't it? It's a muscle, so muscles start shivering. It doesn't move in and out like it should do. So if you can control your breathing in the cold water, you can control it under anywhere. Have you tried deep water diving?
No.
Where you hold your breath for like 7 minutes.
Ooh. 7 minutes? No.
Yeah. So it's a really good book called Breath by James Nestor. Really good book. I recommend you read it. Really good. He did a podcast a few weeks ago with the guy from UK, Stephen Bartlett. You know Dragon's Den. So you got the Shark's Tank in.
Yeah.
So we got the Dragon's Den in the UK.
Yeah.
But one of the guys on there has got a podcast called Diary of a CEO, and he interviewed James Nestor. He's an American doctor. He's not a doctor. He's a kind of he's not a I don't know what you got in America. We call them respiratory physicians in the UK, but you call them pulmonologist in America, like lung doctors.
Yes.
He's not a lung doctor, but he's knows a lot about the lungs and breathing. And he talks about how we only breathe 20% of our capacity. Because we're constantly overstimulated. We can take deep breaths, and that goes back to being present. So we should be taking 7 breaths a minute, and some people can take 3 breaths a minute, but most of them are taking 20 breaths a minute.
Wow. It can be so simple as that deep conscious breath could bring us back to center, to presence.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So he talks about how we're just breathing so shallowly. And like nice deep breath,
Yeah.
3 in, 1 at the top, and 3 out. That's 7 seconds. So if you have a 7-second breath, you're only going to breathe 8 to 9 times in a minute.
Do you think we can get to that point where we're doing that without thinking about it? That is just our natural state?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
I'm going to focus on that. I like that.
Yeah, no, it's really good. Yeah, because it's true. Because my patients, like in hospital, most of them are breathing at 15, 20 a minute. That's a breath every 3 seconds. That means 1.5 in, 1.5 out. That's it's tiny.
it's like constantly being in fight or flight, and that's an indication that we're
Yeah.
in fight or flight, and we're not aware of it.
Absolutely, exactly. It is fight or flight because it's adrenaline based, and to get out of flight or flight, to get into rest and digest, we need to stimulate the vagus nerve. And you can, actually, the vagus nerve, if you look at anatomy, it wraps around the diaphragm. It wraps around the diaphragm. So when
Wow.
if you look at any anatomical diagram, the vagus nerve. So if you actually learn to stimulate the diaphragm, you really stimulate the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is the autonomic nervous system, which causes rest and digest, not flight or flight. It causes rest and digest. And we need to stimulate that more because we're not doing either. We're not resting because we're overstimulated, and we're not digesting because we're always eating. You can't digest if you're always eating because you're constantly spiking. You don't have time to digest. And that's why fasting is so good. Fasting is great because it gives you a good to rest. It gives you a good to detox. And whatever you put into your body is, if you're poisoning your brain, you can never really focus. And the first thing I tell my clients is, if you're putting in junk into your body, of course your mind is going to be polluted. It's like your physiology affects your psychology.
Mm-hmm.
And read the book, by the way, because it talks about carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide and how it's poisoning our brains because how much we're breathing.
Wow.
We're actually self-poisoning ourselves.
Because of the shallowness of breath?
Yes, exactly. Shallowness of breath. And it's a really good book. But no, it's been a pleasure chatting to you, TJ. Really, really insightful. And you know what? I'm going to do more breathing now. That's something I need to do more of. I'm going to do more presence. I'm going to go out in nature a lot. I'm actually going to Estonia on the weekend.
Nice.
So yeah, Estonia's got a lot of mountains and it's got 2,000 islands off the coast of Estonia. So I'm going to definitely take on board what you've said. And for our listeners out there, how can they find you?
TJ Baudet on LinkedIn, TJ Baudet on Instagram.
Good.
And Asif, it was awesome chatting with you. Really nice to meet you.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. It's been a while. We're just trying to arrange it for the last few weeks, but thank you so much, TJ. It's been a real insightful chat, and I'll just stop recording. Stop recording.